Good morning or afternoon or evening, whenever you may be watching this video. I'm excited today to go over the anatomy content for the digestive system with you. The digestive system is one of my favorite units, and I hope you enjoy it as well. So this first segment will be the overview of the anatomy of the digestive system. And we're going to just be drawing today. So if you want to go ahead and grab a piece of paper and get ready, then we will get rolling. So anatomy of the digestive system really begins in the mouth. So we'll just do a sort of small outline here of an approximation of a face, right? Always, when we're doing these drawings, nothing is going to be to scale. So this is a face here, and then this approximate region is going to be the oral cavity, what we know as the mouth. So digestion really does begin in the mouth, and indeed there is mechanical digestion in the mouth and there is chemical digestion in the mouth. So let's go ahead and make a note about those two types of digestion. So there is mechanical digestion as well as chemical. So mechanical digestion is when we're thinking of things like actually chewing the food, breaking down whatever you're chewing with the teeth. The tongue also participates in this. There's also mechanical digestion in other parts of the digestive tract that we'll address when we get to those sections. Now, chemical digestion does begin in the mouth as well, but becomes much more important in more distal segments of the digestive system. For example, the stomach is heavily involved in chemical digestion, as well as the small intestine. So, chemical digestion, we're talking enzymes. By and large, we're talking chemical digestion, we mean enzymes, breaking down the components of the food. We can look in more detail at the anatomy of the mouth later. We'll look at the teeth, we'll look at the tongue, we'll look at the ducts that are placing enzymes into the mouth, and so on. For now, oral cavity. So once we've swallowed our food, we already know some about the pharynx, and the throat is the pharynx. Recall that it has different sections, including the nasopharynx, the oropharynx, and the laryngopharynx. So oropharynx and laryngopharynx are indeed supposed to be shared passageways for both air and food, as you already know. So this structure is the esophagus. So the esophagus is by and large a passive structure. It has muscular components that allows the passive tube to sort of help food on its way from the oral cavity to the stomach. Now, we already know that the esophagus is located posterior to the trachea, and this is an important reason why the trachea is smooth muscle posteriorly. As you swallow a bolus of food, it has to pass through the esophagus to reach the stomach, and if we had a rigid, completely solid trachea anterior to this structure, it would be very difficult for the esophagus to expand and contract in order to pass food from the oral cavity to the stomach. So once we pass through the diaphragm, again, this is not to scale, we will actually enter into the stomach. So let's add our stomach here in our drawing. We'll look in more detail at the anatomy of the stomach as we move on. But in general, the stomach has different regions, including a fundus, a body, and an antrum. Again, we'll get all this later. But all in all, the stomach is important for both chemical and mechanical digestion, as well as the mouth. So here, the stomach is very acidic. It has a lot of enzymatic activity going on, and we also have a heavy churning action to help mechanically break down the food that has been swallowed. After the stomach, we move into the small intestine, and I should mention that we are moving from proximal to distal in these structures. So the small intestine is very long. So the small intestine is somewhere around 20 feet or so in most people on average. Now it does vary quite a bit, and it's very compacted, right? You can imagine how compact the structure must be to fit somewhere around 20 feet of small intestine into this region, but indeed it is quite long when stretched out from end to end. I'm just going to put a horizontal line here because you'll see in a moment why I'm doing this, but just go ahead and sketch that in, and we'll come back to that. So here's our small intestine. We're just going to add a bunch of squiggles to be our small intestine here for now. We'll look at its anatomy in more detail in a few moments. Now, the distal part of the small intestine is called the ileum. So the ileum is the most distal part of the small intestine. And the ileum is the part that meets the colon, or the large intestine. So large intestine begins at the ileocecal junction, and large intestine travels first ascending, then transversely, then descending. Okay, so we call the large intestine a 3.5-sided picture frame because it has the ascending portion, the transverse portion, and then the descending portion. Finally, we end up in the sigmoid colon, sigmoid for S-shaped. So here's our sigmoid portion of the large intestine, or the sigmoid colon. And then we get into the rectum, and finally the anus. So from there, of course, the food is entered from the outside world into the oral cavity, traveled through the esophagus, through the stomach, small intestine, then the ascending, transverse, descending portions of the colon, then the sigmoid colon, rectum, anus, and out into the outside world once again. Now, there are a few accessory structures that I want to add to this overview image while we are here. So, accessory structures are not part of this main tube, all right? This main tube is also known as the alimentary canal. Let's write that word. Okay, so the alimentary canal is the main portion of the digestive system, the continuous tube from the mouth to the anus, right? Alimentary canal. Now, there are also accessory digestive organs in addition to the main tube. So we'll indicate the accessory organs with an asterisk on our picture here. There are a few that we will look at their anatomy in more detail, and especially when we get into our physiology content, we'll be spending a lot of time on things like the liver, the pancreas, the gallbladder, and these other accessory digestive organs. For now, let's add them to our overview image. The first one we will add can be the liver. So it's going to be sort of tucked behind and the stomach and the small intestine here, and it's going to be traveling posterior to this flexure of the colon here that we will name later. So this is our liver. Very large structure. When we go into the gross lab to look at this anatomy, you'll be able to see the liver and appreciate its size, and it's going to really startle you, the size of this organ. Next accessory organ we will add is sort of tucked behind the stomach here. This is the pancreas. The pancreas is extremely important for producing digestive enzymes that aid in the breakdown of the food we have eaten. And in addition, it has an endocrine function. So you all know some of the endocrine functions of the body already. We're going to build on the endocrine pancreas in a separate lecture because I think it is so important. The endocrine pancreas is vital for maintaining blood sugar, right? So we've introduced this idea of regulating blood glucose levels or blood sugar levels throughout the body, and the pancreas is a vital organ for doing that. It releases a hormone called insulin in order to do that. Now, again, there's an endocrine function of the pancreas that involves insulin. There's an exocrine function of the pancreas that involves the digestive processes that we're going to be talking about in the physiology of this unit. So insulin is endocrine pancreas. Digestive enzymes are exocrine pancreas. We'll talk a lot about those distinctions as we go. A final accessory digestive organ that I want to add here is the spleen. So we've already been introduced to the concept of the spleen in the blood unit. Spleen, of course, is what we called our red blood cell graveyard, where our red blood cells go to die. It is a highly vascularized organ that bleeds profusely if damaged. So spleen is another accessory digestive organ that has functions involving the digestive system. More importantly, its anatomy is directly related to the digestive system because of its close proximity to the pancreas and to a flexure of the colon that we will name subsequently. So again, liver is an accessory digestive organ. Spleen, pancreas are all accessory digestive organs. Let's go ahead and add one more. There is a small organ located on the inferior aspect of the liver, and this is known as the gallbladder. So the gallbladder is most vital function is for fat breakdown or breakdown of digested lipids. So without the gallbladder, then oftentimes the consequence involves not being able to break down fats in the diet as efficiently. So we'll look at the anatomy of the gallbladder and the biliary tree, where these digestive enzymes are going as we move forward. So this serves as a nice overview of the basic anatomy of the digestive system. In subsequent segments, we will zoom in on each of these organs and look at them more specifically.